The 2013 horse meat scandal was one of the largest food fraud scandals in modern European history. It began in January 2013 when food safety authorities discovered that a wide range of products labeled as beef actually contained undeclared horse meat. In some products, the horse meat content was extremely high, even reaching close to 100%. What initially appeared to be a limited labeling problem quickly expanded into a multinational investigation involving supermarkets, meat processors, traders, slaughterhouses, regulators, and criminal networks across Europe. The scandal first came to public attention after the Food Safety Authority of Ireland conducted DNA tests on frozen beef burgers sold in Irish and British supermarkets. The tests revealed horse DNA in many products marketed as beef. One of the most shocking findings involved frozen burgers sold by Tesco, where one sample contained roughly 29% horse DNA. Other supermarket chains implicated included Aldi, Lidl, and Iceland. The issue escalated dramatically in February 2013 when frozen lasagna products sold by Findus were found to contain massive amounts of horse meat instead of beef. Some products reportedly contained between 60% and 100% horse meat. This transformed the scandal from a questionable contamination incident into clear evidence of systematic fraud. One reason the scandal became so explosive was because horse meat itself is not inherently dangerous and is legally consumed in several European countries, including parts of France, Belgium, and Italy. The public outrage came primarily from deception. Consumers had purchased products explicitly labeled as beef, but the contents were different. Many people felt betrayed by food manufacturers and retailers. The scandal exposed how little transparency existed within the modern industrial food supply chain. Another sensitive aspect involved religion and dietary restrictions. Investigators found pig DNA in many supposedly beef-based products as well. This created serious concerns for Muslims, Jews, and others who avoid pork for religious reasons. Some consumers also objected to eating horse meat for cultural or emotional reasons, especially in countries like the United Kingdom and Ireland, where horses are commonly associated with sport, companionship, and rural culture rather than food. The scandal revealed the extraordinary complexity of Europe's meat supply network. Meat products often pass through many countries before reaching consumers. In several cases, horse meat originated in Romania, passed through traders in Cyprus and the Netherlands, moved into processing plants in France or elsewhere, and finally appeared in ready-made meals sold in British supermarkets. Each step added another layer of paperwork, subcontracting, and opportunity for fraud. Investigators discovered that parts of the meat industry operated through a maze of brokers and intermediaries. Meat could be bought, relabeled, frozen, mixed, and resold multiple times across borders. This made tracing the true origin of products extremely difficult. The scandal demonstrated how globalization had transformed food production into a highly fragmented system, where retailers often lacked direct oversight over their own supply chains. One major concern involved the veterinary drug phenylbutazone, commonly called bute. This anti-inflammatory drug is often used in horses, but is banned in animals intended for human consumption in the European Union. Authorities worried that horses treated with bute had entered the food supply illegally. Although testing eventually showed only limited contamination levels, the discovery increased fears that the issue was not merely mislabeling, but a broader breakdown in food safety controls. The scandal also exposed weaknesses in Europe's horse passport system. In the EU, horses are supposed to carry documentation recording whether they are eligible for human consumption. However, investigations found falsified paperwork, incomplete records, and failures in enforcement. Some horses that should never have entered the food chain apparently did so anyway. As the scandal spread, more major food companies became involved. Nestlé recalled pasta meals in several European countries after detecting horse meat in products labeled as beef. Other companies, suppliers, and processors across Europe issued recalls as authorities expanded testing. The crisis eventually affected more than a dozen countries. The economic consequences were severe. Millions of frozen meals, burgers, and processed meat products were removed from supermarket shelves. Consumer trust in frozen ready meals collapsed. Reports at the time indicated that sales of frozen burgers dropped dramatically after the revelations became public. Supermarkets and manufacturers suffered major reputational damage, while governments faced criticism for weak oversight. European authorities responded with large-scale testing programs. The European Union organized coordinated DNA testing across member states to determine how widespread the fraud had become. Thousands of meat samples were tested both for horse DNA and for veterinary drug contamination. Europol became involved because investigators increasingly believed organized criminal networks were exploiting weaknesses in the food industry for profit. The scandal became an important case study in discussions about food globalization. Modern food systems prioritize low prices, high volume, and rapid international distribution. Large retailers often pressure suppliers to reduce costs aggressively, which can create incentives for substitution and fraud somewhere within the chain. Horse meat was generally cheaper than beef in some contexts, especially when sourced through questionable channels, making adulteration profitable. Many analysts later argued that the scandal was less about horse meat specifically, and more about traceability. Consumers realized that food labels could not always be trusted, especially for heavily processed products with long international supply chains. The media coverage became enormous across Europe. British tabloids in particular turned the scandal into daily front-page news. The story generated widespread public jokes and memes because of the unusual nature of the fraud, but beneath the humor, there was serious anxiety about food safety and corporate honesty. Public attention remained intense for months because new contaminated products kept being discovered. Public reactions were mixed. Some people were disgusted by the idea of eating horse meat unknowingly, while others argued that the real issue was fraudulent labeling rather than the meat itself. In countries where horse meat consumption was culturally normal, many observers were puzzled by the intensity of the outrage in Britain and Ireland. The scandal also highlighted how processed foods can obscure ingredients from consumers. A frozen lasagna or burger may contain meat from multiple animals sourced from different countries and combined through numerous industrial processes. By the time the final product reaches supermarket shelves, neither retailers nor consumers may fully understand the product's origins without extensive testing and documentation systems. In the years after 2013, European governments and food companies introduced stricter traceability measures, more DNA testing, and stronger anti-fraud monitoring systems. Food crime units were strengthened, and regulators began paying more attention not only to food safety, but also to food authenticity. The scandal became a major turning point in how European authorities approach supply chain transparency. The event is now widely studied in fields such as food science, supply chain management, criminology, business ethics, and regulatory policy. Universities and business schools frequently use the scandal as a case study to examine globalization, corporate oversight failures, fraud incentives, and the vulnerability of highly complex supply networks.